It rained all night. The kind of gentle, lingering rain that felt like the sky was pouring out its heart, seeping through every gap in the roof, trickling down the rusted edge of the gutter on the quiet, white wooden house, sitting at the edge of a small town in Georgia. Wendy, 3 years old, woke up to the familiar silence of a house, no longer filled with the sound of children's footsteps, no longer echoing the voice of the man she once loved, murmuring over the morning paper. Since her husband died, the house had felt bigger and emptier, as if the very walls themselves were waiting for someone to come home. She poured a second cup of coffee, stood by the kitchen window, and watched the rain blur the front yard. And then she saw it. A German shepherd, large-soaked, standing still as a statue at the wooden gate. No barking, no whining, just standing there, straight-backed, head held high, dark eyes cutting through the rain, staring directly at her. Wendy set her coffee down, her heart tightening without warning. There was something in that gaze that made it impossible for her to turn away. Her husband used to work with the K-9 unit. She remembered that stance, proud, resilient, carrying the alertness of a soul that once knew command and pain. The dog had no collar, no tags, but it didn't look like a stray. It looked like a soldier left behind on the battlefield. Without a word, Wendy turned back inside. A few minutes later, she returned with a bowl of cold chicken and some brown rice, placing it just inside the gate. "You look like you just came back from war," she murmured, her words floating with the rain. The dog didn't come forward immediately. It just stared at her a few seconds longer, then stepped forward slowly. Not greedy, not hurried. It ate like one who still carried dignity even in hunger. Wendy folded her arms, standing beneath the eaves, rain trailing down the sleeves of her worn sweater. She didn't know why she stood there so long. Only that. She didn't want to go back inside too soon. When the dog finished, it lifted its head. Their eyes met, one human, one creature without human words, but sending something deeper than any language. Then it turned away, trotting down the small path that led into the woods across the road without looking back. That night, Wendy didn't sleep well. She kept thinking about the dog. Where had it come from? Why were its eyes so sorrowful, and yet so strangely calm? She thought it was the first and last time, a lost soul pausing briefly in the rain. But she was wrong, because the next morning when she opened the door, it came back, and this time it brought something with it, something that would change Wendy's world forever. The next morning, the sky was still overcast, but the rain had stopped. Tiny droplets clung like jewels to the leaves outside the porch. Wendy stepped out, a cup of hot tea in hand, the faint warmth curling through fingers worn rough by time. She was about to turn back inside when her eyes froze. He had returned. Rex. The large German shepherd sat silently at the foot of the steps, as if he'd been waiting there since before dawn. This time his back was drenched but upright, ears alert, eyes sharp as steel. Still no bark, no whimper, no movement. But he hadn't come alone. Wendy stepped forward slowly, her heart pounding. Next to Rex, curled in a torn piece of cloth, was something tiny and trembling. A puppy, soaked cold, smeared with dirt, smaller than a throw pillow, its eyes barely open, letting out faint whimpers like wind slipping through a cracked door. Beside it, something glinted faintly in the early sun. A police badge. Wendy dropped to her knees. Her fingers trembled as she touched the badge's scratched metal rusting edges. But she recognized it instantly, the kind her husband had worn over his heart for 2 years on the force. She flipped it over, faintly engraved on the back, S. A Whitaker. Sean Whitaker, her husband's closest partner. The man who had gone missing 5 years ago, along with his K9 unit. The man no one spoke of anymore. The wind picked up. Wendy bowed her head as a flood of memory surged in her chest. Sean laughing softly at her kitchen table. Rex now. She was certain it was Rex, always at his side like a shadow. Those long nights soaked with the scent of uniforms and whispered conversations between man and dog, as if they were brothers. And now, Rex had come back, not with a corpse, but with a new life and a memory that refused to be buried. Wendy gently stroked the cloth wrapped around the tiny pup, a tattered piece of uniform. Rex sat still beside her, his eyes, deep as a canyon, but unbroken. He wasn't asking for help. He was passing on a message, a legacy, a duty. I've carried this all this time, and now it's yours. Wendy looked up. Tears didn't fall, but they burned hot down her cheeks. It's you, isn't it? Rex, she whispered. The dog didn't nod, but slowly lifted one paw and placed it gently in her hand. No words, just a touch. But Wendy knew without doubt. That boy had come home. Wendy held the puppy in her arms, light as a breath, cold as a January sky. The torn cloth wrapped around it was soaked through heavy with rainwater and the scent of memory. She bundled it in an old wool scarf, pulling it close to her chest, as if cradling a heart that had been cold for far too long. Rex still sat on the porch, eyes fixed on her without blinking. He didn't push his way inside, didn't demand anything. He just waited as though standing guard over something sacred. Wendy looked up and opened the creaking wooden door. Cold air slipped in like a familiar ghost. But this time, it carried with it a new kind of warmth, alive, fragile, and real. You can come in, if you want, Wendy whispered. Rex didn't respond right away. Only after a few seconds, with slow, steady steps, he crossed the threshold, like someone who had walked through that doorway 100 times before. Inside, the old fireplace crackled faintly. Wendy laid the tiny pup she had already named him Scout beside the old armchair, wrapped him in thick blankets, and gently dripped warm milk into his tiny mouth. Scout whimpered softly, then shifted. A weak sound, but a sign of life. Rex didn't move closer. He sat a few paces away by the firehead held high, his eyes scanning the room as if surveying a battlefield returned to. There was no confusion in his gaze, only the silence of a soldier come home. Wendy placed the police badge on the kitchen counter beside the torn cloth, and the scarf wrapped around Scout. Her hand trembled as she touched the back of the badge. Whitaker. The name dropped into her chest like a stone. She remembered Sean, his eyes, when he spoke of Rex as if describing not a dog, but a fellow soldier. He doesn't just follow commands, Sean had once said. He senses what people can't say. Rex doesn't forget. Wendy looked back at Rex, and then she saw something strange. Tied around Rex's front leg was another strip of fabric, not the one from Scout, thicker, dirtier, and hiding something inside. She bent down. Rex didn't resist, didn't move. She gently untied it. Inside, a plastic-wrapped bundle and a USB drive. The room seemed to still. The wind outside whistled at the window panes. Scout slept peacefully. But Rex didn't blink, didn't flinch as if he had just completed the most important handoff of his life. You've carried this all these years, Wendy whispered. A message. From Sean, Rex didn't answer, but his eyes, never leaving hers, held the weight of an unwritten memoir. Wendy powered on her late son's old laptop. The hard drive churned slowly, groaning with age. She inserted the USB. A single folder appeared on the screen. For her, and in that instant, Wendy knew. This story hadn't even begun yet. And Rex, he hadn't just come to deliver something. He had come to walk the rest of the way with her. The computer screen flickered faintly. Wendy's trembling hand moved the cursor into the folder marked simply, "For her." A list of files appeared: videos, audio clips, word journals, GPS coordinates, scanned handwritten notes. But Wendy saw only one thing. A video file dated 5 years ago. A faint line of text blurred into the frame. "If you're watching this," she clicked it. The screen went dark for a few seconds. Then a man appeared, hollow-eyed, bearded. Eyes that had once lived alongside hope, now filled only with restrained vigilance. Sean Whitaker. He was sitting in a tent, an old backpack behind him. Rex, much younger, sleeping in the corner of the frame. Wind hissed softly through the fabric, and then a gravelly voice broke the silence. "If someone's watching this, it means Rex got it to the right person." Wendy covered her mouth, her vision blurred with tears. "I knew something was wrong. Ever since they switched my handler, cut communications without reason, stripped my secondary weapon, and left me and Rex in unmapped zones. I can't explain everything, but I know I'm being watched not by the enemy, but by people inside." Sean bowed his head. He sighed. Rex stirred in the background, as if sensing his handler's tension. "I don't have many options." I talked to Rex, told him everything. "He's smart. He remembers. If I don't make it back, he'll know where to go, who to find. And I hope that person is you." He looked directly into the camera. "Wendy, I remember the meal you made after Tom's funeral when we sat and talked. You believe in justice. You believe in things that I, in my final moments, can only dare to believe in silently. Trust Rex, and if you can, finish what I couldn't." The screen went black. The last sound was a weary exhale, then the wind picking up as if carrying his voice back into the depths of the forest. Wendy sat motionless. By the fireplace, Rex still watched, unblinking, unmoving. She whispered, her breath fractured. "You carried this for 5 years, through forests, through rain, to find me." And then, as if in response, Rex stepped forward slowly and sat beside Wendy. No whimper, no lick, just presence. So complete that Wendy felt herself being anchored, held between the weight of the past and something not yet revealed. It was a long night. Scout slept soundly for the first time, belly-warm body curled in a soft blanket by the fire. And Wendy. She opened Sean's logs, reading each line, as if holding the hand of a ghost, guiding her through darkness. April 7th. Rex found more strange markings carved into a tree. I reported it to base. They ignored it. April 12th. I was cut off from Western contact. No notice. I think someone wants me erased. April 14th. We dug up part of a uniform blood-stained. No reports logged. That night, Wendy did not sleep, and Rex, as he had done for the past 5 years, sat silently by the door, head high, like a sentinel. Because when justice falls silent, the loyal will speak in place of the living. The glow of the computer screen still lingered, pale blue and quiet, as Wendy stood after hours spent reading every word of Sean's digital journals. Rex lay there, still awake. His ears twitched slightly whenever the wind shifted. No other sound filled the room, except the steady breath of Scout, the tiny pup curled before the fireplace. Wendy pulled her old wool scarf tighter around her. Her hands were still shaking, not from the cold, but from a strange, growing certainty inside her. I can't keep this to myself. She picked up her phone, an old scratched-up smartphone, scrolled through the contact list. Carla Monroe, a name she hadn't dialed in years. Her husband's old friend, one of the few officers left untouched by corruption. Wendy pressed call. 1 ring. 2. 3. A click. Hello, a husky, firm voice. Carla. It's me. Wendy. A pause. Wendy, good Lord, how long has it been, Carla? I don't have time to explain. I need you to come to my house. Tomorrow. It's about Sean. Another pause, this one heavier. Longer. Sean Whitaker, yes, I thought he's dead. But he left something behind, and Rex brought it. On the other end, Wendy heard a chair scrape back. Footsteps. Tell no one. No one. Carla, do you understand? I do, Carla said quickly. I'll be there. Stay safe. And keep that dog close. Wendy ended the call. Rex was still watching her. No movement. No need for questions. No need for words. Just presence. Steady as steel. The next morning, the sky remained gray. Wendy brewed coffee, fed Scout. Rex ate slowly, as always, never greedy, never rushed. As if he understood, he no longer lived for himself. At exactly 11 a.m., an old SUV screeched to a stop outside. A woman stepped out. Carla Monroe, short hair, dark leather jacket, black boots. Her gaze swept the area like a cop on patrol. Hello, Wendy, she said. Her eyes locking onto Rex, who stood by the window. God, that's really a K9, not just a K9, Carla. I know, Carla nodded. That look, that's the look of someone who's lost their partner, but never gave up the mission. At the kitchen table, Wendy laid it all out. The badge with the name S. Whitaker. 2 pieces of torn fabric. The USB holding Sean's journals. Printed pages of Sean's scanned notes. Marked up coordinates. Maps, observations. Carla read. Her already serious face grew paler with each page. No one in the unit ever reported this. I know Wendy said, because they covered it up. And Sean knew he wouldn't survive. Carla looked up. Are you ready? To dig into something the entire system wanted buried. Wendy didn't hesitate. I lost my husband. I know what loss is, but I won't accept lies, and I won't let Rex carry this secret for the rest of his life without anyone listening. Carla stood. Then we go. We follow these coordinates into the woods where Sean was last deployed. If what he said is true, we won't just find loss. We'll find the reason. Wendy clutched the folder tightly. Rex had already risen alert, ready. Scout slept peacefully in his bed, warm and unaware that the one who had saved him was now leading a different battle, not for revenge, but for the truth. Carla's SUV turned off the worn asphalt road, beginning to rattle along a winding red dirt trail, through the forest riddled with potholes and roots rising like veins beneath the soil. Wendy sat in the passenger seat, eyes fixed on the GPS screen, fingers clenched tightly around the printed pages from Sean's journal. Inside her, it wasn't just worry, it was something stranger, as if the forest itself was trying to hold them back. Rex sat motionless in the back seat, but his eyes stayed open. Every time the vehicle turned a corner, his ears twitched as if he remembered, as if he had walked this place before. We're close to the coordinates, Wendy said, voice low but certain. Carla nodded. The journal marks it near an old iron fence. It used to be the border of a restricted training zone. Abandoned now. No one goes near it. The SUV came to a stop in front of a rusted gate, overgrown with vines and moss. No warning signs, no human footprints. But Rex had already opened the door before the engine cut off. He leapt down, inhaling deeply. The wind carried scents of rotting wood, damp soil, and something else. Old, familiar, and warning. No one said a word. Carla pulled out her sidearm, thumbed the safety. Wendy carried a backpack full of documents and a small water bottle. Rex took the lead, no leash, no command. Just walked. I've never believed dogs could remember exact locations. After all these years, Carla whispered. Rex forgets nothing. Wendy answered. After 40 minutes of trekking through forest, Rex suddenly stopped. No bark, no growl, just stillness. His head lowered, eyes locked onto the decomposing leaves beneath his paws. Right there, a patch of flat ground. But different leaves piled abnormally thick. No weeds, no signs of animals. Too still. Carla approached, slowly crouched down. Beneath the leaves were small stones arranged in a rough circle, like an unmarked grave. "Oh my God," she whispered. Wendy dropped to her knees. Rex remained still, his gaze waiting for someone to say what needed to be said. They began removing stone by stone, digging through damp earth. Soon, Wendy found a torn scrap of navy blue fabric from a police uniform. Carla pulled out more and found a second badge caked in mud, so worn the engraving was nearly gone. But Wendy wiped it gently. The name appeared clear, as if it had never vanished. A. Dunley. Alan Dunley. A police officer reported missing 2 years ago. No clues, no extended investigation. Swallowed by silence. "This is why Sean disappeared," Carla said, her voice going cold. He knew, and they silenced him. Not just him. Wendy whispered, her voice cracking. Dunley, too. Rex circled the grave once, then sat upright, facing the forest as if standing guard. The air held still, right as a branch snapped in the distance. All three froze. Carla raised her gun. Rex growled deep and low, not an alarm, but a warning. "We're not alone," Carla said. "Someone's watching." No one emerged. No further sound. Just the deep woods. And a silence so thick it felt like a veil hiding something still alive on the other side of memory. On the drive back, no one spoke. Carla kept one hand near the trigger. Wendy clutched the badge to her chest. Rex in the back seat didn't close his eyes once, as if he had returned to the battlefield. They had found the grave. But in Rex's eyes, Wendy saw this was only the surface, and beneath it, a story no one had yet dared to unearth. Back home, Wendy felt that something in her familiar house had changed. Not the lighting, not the placement of things, but because they had brought something back, a piece of the forest's darkness. Carla poured coffee, her weapon resting by her thigh. Wendy curled beside Scout. The puppy now fast asleep in her lap, blissfully unaware that his very existence was under threat. Rex did not sleep. At all. He lay near the door, head on his front paws, eyes open and sharp like a moonless night. "He'll come," Carla said softly, "one way or another. They don't let the truth walk around longer than necessary." Wendy didn't answer. She simply laid a hand on Rex's back, and though he didn't look at her, she felt it he was ready. At exactly 9:00 p.m., 3 knocks at the door. Not rushed, not hesitant. Precise like a cold Morse code. Knock, knock, knock. Carla sprang up like a spring, hand poised on her Glock 17. "Let me!" She motioned for Wendy to stay behind her. Rex was already on his feet, body taut, releasing a low, deep growl. Carla pulled back the curtain. A Mestin stood on the porch. His shadow stretched long under the amber light. Not unfamiliar, but not familiar either. Shirt buttoned to the collar. Long coat. Cropped silver hair. His eyes like sunglasses worn at night. Carla cracked the door open. "Who are you?" The man smiled. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm looking for a dog." "Large, shepherd breed. Name's Rex." No one spoke. Wendy felt her entire body go cold, despite the fire still crackling behind her. "That dog is government property," he continued. "Classified K9 unit. Disappeared during a restricted operation. He's not supposed to be here." Carla's voice cut like ice strange. "Records say Rex died with his handler in an accident. Some reports," the man said casually, "are written to hide what needs hiding. And now he's gone off script." Rex stepped forward. No bark, no growl. Just placed himself between Wendy and the man. Motionless eyes fixed like a living bronze statue. The man glanced at Rex. "Still on duty, I see." "No duty left," Wendy said, her voice trembling but sharp. Only the truth. The man's demeanor shifted. The smile vanished. "You don't understand what you're involving yourself in, ma'am. This isn't some television drama. This is national security." "Sean Whitaker was murdered," Carla stepped forward. "Rex brought back the proof, and now you're here asking for the dog, but you're not asking about the crime." "Why silence?" "Only the wind brushing the trees outside." Then he answered, "'Cause some dogs know too much." His eyes drifted toward Scout, curled on the rug completely unaware. And in that moment, Wendy understood. They weren't just here for Rex. They were here for what Rex was protecting. The man took a step back off the porch. No threat, no rush. "This is your first warning," he said. "There won't be a second." And then he disappeared into the night, as if he had never been there. Carla locked the door, drew every curtain. Rex returned to his post, but this time he didn't lie down. He sat, eyes fixed on the door. "We need to prepare," Carla said. Wendy nodded, but her gaze remained on Rex. "He's not just a dog carrying memories. He's the last soul still loyal to something worth believing in. And that is what they fear most." That night, the wind howled through the doorframe like someone whispering a warning in a forgotten language no one remembered. Wendy sat beside the fireplace, Scout, sleeping peacefully in her lap, breathing softly, unaware of what was approaching. Carla never left her weapon hand, resting near the grip eyes, fixed through the curtain slit. A soldier awaiting an ambush that could come at any moment. And Rex stood by the door, not sleeping, not yawning, not blinking. "You're not guarding," Wendy murmured. "You're waiting." And she was right, around 4 a.m., when the sky outside was still thick with darkness and silence heavy as stone. Rex let out a soft whine. Not from pain, not from fear, but like a calling. A memory awakened. Wendy rose quickly, kneeling beside him. "You want to show me something?" Rex turned his head, looked directly into her eyes, and that gaze was no longer cold. It glowed with a language that needed no words. "It's time." Carla stepped out from the hallway, already dressed, gun holstered. "He's taking us somewhere," Wendy said. "I think it's the place Sean left everything behind." The sky had yet to brighten, but Rex moved with certainty, as if a map had been etched into his mind by footsteps alone. Wendy and Carla followed through the wet underbrush. Dry branches scratching at sleeves mud slick underfoot. After nearly an hour, Rex stopped. They stood before a great oak, its trunk hollow at the base, blanketed in moss and rot. Nothing seemed remarkable until Rex placed his paw on the base and began to dig. Carla flicked on her flashlight. Wendy knelt, sweeping away layers of damp leaves. Beneath them, a plastic bag tightly wrapped in duct tape, buried just under the wet soil. Wendy lifted it with both hands, a relic damp and cold, like holding a piece of history. She opened it. Inside, printed photos, grainy but clear enough to show uniformed officers exchanging bundles beneath a dock cache documents. Printed internal emails labeled confidential. The name Major Eli Rohr appearing more than 10 times. And a handwritten letter folded carefully, penmanship, shaky and uneven. Carla, if Rex brought this to you, it means I'm gone. Don't trust the unit. Rohr's using K9s to transport classified files, no tracking, no signatures. Dunley found out. Now he's buried somewhere in these woods. I'm next. Rex knows everything. Trust him. Finish this for me. Sean. No one spoke. The wind stopped. The forest seemed to hold its breath with them. "Oh my God," Carla whispered. "This is the whole case. Evidence clear, direct with names, faces, documents. Now I get why they're watching Rex," she added. "It's not because he's a dog. It's because he's the only one who never betrayed." And then, as if the universe itself refused them peace. A branch snapped. Not far. Rex's ears shot up. He growled. Carla pulled her gun. She yanked Wendy behind her. "Someone's out there." Footsteps, leaves rustling. Then a low voice. "Give us the documents. We only want the bag. You can walk away." Wendy clutched the bundle tighter. Rex stepped forward, body taut like a drawn bowstring, teeth bared. "Don't give orders," Wendy said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, to someone who stood guard 5 years for a promise. Carla whispered, "Run to the old ranger station. It's 400 meters. I'll hold them off. Go now." "No." Wendy shook her head. "We go together. All of us." Carla nodded. And Rex, without a command, took the lead, sprinting into the forest's darkness with Wendy and Carla chasing close behind. They ran. Wendy felt each heartbeat crash against her ribs. Branches slapped her face, the wind pulling her backward like invisible hands. But no one stopped. No one looked back. Rex led the way, weaving through terrain, as if he remembered every tree root, every twist of earth, every slick slope. Behind him, Carla stayed close to Wendy, panting as she pulled out her phone. "I just sent our coordinates to dispatch. If they're still tracking my device, someone will come. He won't survive being shot again," Wendy said breathlessly, clutching the evidence bag tight to her chest. Rex suddenly halted in front of a collapsed concrete structure, moss-covered and crumbling, an abandoned ranger station. The wooden door hung off its hinges. Inside, dark, dusty, forgotten, and Carla shouted, pushing Wendy through. She scanned for cover, flipping over a rotted wooden table and shoving it against the door as a makeshift barricade. Rex stood firm at the entrance, unmoving, unflinching. Far-off footsteps pounded against the damp forest floor, and then a gunshot sliced the air like fabric being torn. A bullet nicked a tree beside the station. Shell casing hit the earth. Rex did not retreat. "We don't want blood," a man's voice yelled from the shadows. "We just want the dog." "And what he's carrying." Carla's reply came sharp as steel. "Then come take it." Another shot slammed into the station's door. Splinters exploded outward. Wendy curled into the corner, clutching the documents, heart pounding like a war drum. But she didn't cry, didn't pray. She stared only at Rex, the soldier with no armor still guarding with everything he had. Suddenly Rex lunged. "Rex, no!" Wendy screamed, but it was too late. He launched forward like an arrow, no bark, no command, no hesitation. His growl split the air, not the growl of a dog, but the roar of justice ripping through deceit. A scream, a scuffle, then a shot, a groan, and silence. Carla leapt up, bolting out with her gun drawn. Wendy followed, heart frozen. They found Rex standing over a man collapsed on the ground. Another figure had fled, vanishing into the deep woods. Rex was trembling. His left shoulder bleeding, a bullet had grazed through thick fur. Oh, God. Rex. Wendy dropped to her knees, tearing off a scarf to staunch the wound. "He saved our lives," Carla whispered, her voice cracking. Again. They didn't wait. Carla radioed coordinates again. This time, her voice didn't shake. "Officer under attack. K9 wounded. We have evidence of federal crimes. Send immediate backup." 30 minutes later, the sound of helicopter blades thundered through the silver sky. Searchlights swept through the trees. Sirens screamed. Rex lay in Wendy's arms, awake, alert, as if he refused to close his eyes until the truth was spoken. At the military veterinary hospital, the doctor pulled off his gloves and stepped into the waiting room. "Clean shot. Didn't hit bone." "He's tougher than we thought," Wendy cried. For the first time since it all began. Not out of pain, but because she knew that soldier was still with them. 4 days after the forest ambush, the town still didn't know what had truly happened. On the front page of the local paper, K9 saves 2, an unexplained incident. That was it. But inside government buildings and internal offices, the silence had shattered. Carla Monroe stood in a closed-door conference room at the Intercounty Police Department. Laid out on the table, a printed copy of Sean Whitaker's handwritten letter, crime scene photos of Alan Dunley, electronic files from the USB, forged badges, unauthorized deployment orders, and a single name marked in red Major. "Eli Rohr, we have evidence." Carla stated that Rohr orchestrated the manipulation of elite K9 units, using them to transport documents, money and classified files off record, outside any official system. Those who discovered the truth disappeared. An internal affairs officer across from her exhaled slowly. "But Rohr is retired. He's no longer in the force. That doesn't mean he's innocent." Carla replied, sharp and clear. Wendy sat quietly outside the room in the hallway, her hand resting on the folded cloth wrapped gently around Rex's paw, where he lay curled at her feet. His wound had closed, but his eyes still watchful, still waiting. Scout, the once frail pup now. Boulder chewed happily on Carla's old sock, unaware that his future was being decided, one sentence at a time, behind that closed door. That afternoon, the arrest order was issued. Major Eli Rohr was taken into custody at his private residence, charged with abuse of power, tampering with national security infrastructure, indirect involvement in 2 deaths. Whitaker and Dunley Wendy stood quietly on her porch as Carla delivered the news. She looked toward Rex, now sitting upright, his gaze glowing in the golden haze of dusk. "You did it," she whispered. "You brought him home. And more than that, you held on to what the whole system had forgotten: loyalty." Carla smiled, her eyes glassy. They'll call him a hero. But he never needed the title. He just needed someone to keep a promise. The next day, a small ceremony was held in the back lot of the police station. No lights, no trumpets, no cameras. Just Rex Scout, Wendy, Carla, and a few old officers who had once served with Sean. Wendy placed on the memorial table a photo of Sean smiling, his hand resting on young Rex's head. The restored original badge, the torn cloth that once wrapped Scout, and a slip of paper with Sean's handwriting. Rex remembers everything. The ceremony ended in silence. But in Wendy's heart, something rang loud and clear. Truth isn't just something to uncover. It's something to protect in the hands of those who understand its worth. Spring returned to the town, with pale sunlight falling on old porch steps and tiny violet blossoms blooming between cracked bricks. Wendy stood on her front porch, a cup of hot tea in her hands, and for the first time in years, she didn't find the silence frightening. Inside the house, Scout raced in circles around the armchair, a pair of fuzzy socks in his mouth-tail wagging wildly without control or care. By the fireplace, Rex lay curled up, eyes half closed, but his ears alert, as if guarding the dreams of everyone in the house. Wendy smiled. He may lie still, but he's never off duty. After Sean's memorial, the town council at Carla's suggestion sponsored a new program, Trauma and Trust, a support initiative for children with psychological trauma partnered with therapeutic animals. They didn't call it a policy project. They called it a place to begin again. Wendy volunteered to open her home 3 days a week. At first, it was just a few kids. But soon, the story spread of a house with a shepherd who listened to a woman who made hot chocolate better than any shop, and a little pup named Scout who made everyone laugh. Grace, 9, who hadn't spoken a word in 6 months, quietly sat drawing Rex with the exact pencil her father once gave her. Tyler, 11, after surviving a car crash, reached out to pet an animal for the first time. Scout drenched and grinning after falling into a water basin. And Lily, each time she left Wendy's house, wrapped her arms around Rex's neck and whispered, "I won't tell anyone your secret." One afternoon, as the sun began to sink, Wendy and Carla sat on the porch, 2 cups of steaming coffee in hand. "I never thought this place would feel warm again," Carla said softly. Wendy watched as Scout slept, head resting on Rex's paw. The two of them like opposites in color and size, yet perfectly matched. "I never thought one bowl of rice in the rain would lead to a family." Carla laughed. It wasn't the rice. It was trust. Rex opened his eyes slowly. His gaze drifted to Wendy, to Carla, to the soft-colored sky of early dusk. No longer the eyes of someone carrying a burden, but of someone who had passed on what needed to be passed and stayed behind to watch over it. Early morning. The sun wasn't yet warm, but warm enough to start lifting the dew from Wendy's porch steps. She placed a cup of tea on the windowsill. In her hand, a folded piece of paper slightly crumpled, and the old fountain pen she once used to write birthday cards for Tom when he was alive. Scout slept curled on the rug, his head resting against a fuzzy slipper. Rex lay beside him, eyes closed. Breathing steady, but his ears still twitched from time to time. Even in dreams, he stood guard. Wendy began to write. The first line. To Rex, not as a dog, but as a soul who knows how to keep a promise. She paused. Sunlight angled across the table, illuminating floating dust like golden motes of memory. She continued, "You came on a rainy morning, when I believed the world held no more miracles for me. You didn't bark, didn't demand, didn't invade my space. You simply sat with a gaze that carried a journey I couldn't begin to comprehend until you placed it in my hands. You brought back a memory not to hurt me, but to remind me that someone once lived, once fought, once believed to their very last breath. And you were the one who kept that promise for 5 long years. I once thought I saved you, but it turns out you saved me. You gave me a reason to open the door again to brew tea to cook dinner for more than one. You gave me back the feeling of being needed. You never needed comfort. But I hope the strokes I gave your back, the blankets I laid out, and the nights we spent by the fire were enough to tell you. You no longer have to carry the weight alone. You don't write words. But every paw print you left in the wet earth every time you looked back through the woods to make sure I was still there, those were poems. And I will carry them forever. She folded the letter. No envelope, no mail. Just tucked it into her bedside drawer beside an old photo of Rex and Sean, both looking off in the same direction. That afternoon, the children returned. Scout raced around the yard chasing soap bubbles. Rex sat still in the center of the garden, letting 3 children rest their heads on his shoulders, one by one, not moving a muscle. Wendy stood by the doorframe, hands wrapped around a mug of warm cocoa. Carla stepped beside her, whispering, "I heard they're awarding Rex the Medal of Honor." "He doesn't need medals." Wendy smiled softly. "He just needs to know that in the end, someone heard the call of loyalty." When night fell, Scout slept soundly. Rex lay by the fireplace, eyes trained on the door. And under the amber glow of the table lamp, Wendy whispered not aloud, but with her eyes, "Thank you for coming back, for not giving up, for finding your way home. One dog, one woman, one secret that almost stayed buried forever. No medal could ever measure the loyalty of Rex. No words could ever repay a soul who carried the memory of the fallen for 5 years, just to return it to where it truly belonged. But if you ask Wendy, she would simply say, it wasn't a miracle. It was trust kept alive when the world had forgotten what that even meant. Rex's story may end here, but loyalty never fades. If this story made you smile, shed a tear, or simply believe again in something good, share it with someone who might need a little hope. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I believe in those who never give up, even if they never say a word. Thank you for listening. And if you've ever met a Rex in your life, don't forget to say thank you.